Gaming in 2025 is dire. Nearly half of gamers have considered quitting due to cheaters, and well over half have even considered cheating themselves. These are absolutely shocking figures, and I'd almost given up hope that anything was going to get better in the online gaming space anytime soon, until a couple of weeks ago when a Reddit ad caught my attention with a new system that might solve cheating forever.
The moment that we go live in our first big integration, every single person who cheats in games is going to have a vested interest to try to attack us, break our system, make it the worst experience possible.
This is Andrew Wales, the CEO of a new solution designed to fix this problem once and for all. And most interestingly, it isn't even an anti-cheat. That system is called PlaySafeID. As what seems like the last hope for online gaming, and FPS in particular, I sat down with Andrew to understand PlaySafe better and to ask the difficult questions that need to be answered in order to eradicate cheating once and for all. Thank you to PlaySafeID for sponsoring this video. All right, welcome Andrew. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be getting into all of the details of PlaySafe because for this kind of system, the devil really is in the detail with this type of thing. But for the benefit of those who are hearing about this for the very first time, can you give us a try to be short summary of what PlaySafe ID actually is?
Our mission is to make it matter for the first time if people are caught cheating, hacking, or botting in games. We're trying to bring accountability to gaming. So preventing people from just creating a new account and coming straight back in. The way in which we're doing this is games can integrate us and only enable verified players to match with each other. And we're enabling players to verify themselves in a very cool way that keeps them anonymized, that strips personally identifiable information out. But we're doing it in a way that players can verify themselves so that they can only play with other verified players.
Okay, very cool. So a big question that we've seen and a large misconception across the community, I think, because obviously we've talked before about a lot of this stuff, is PlaySafe ID an anti-cheat? And why isn't it effectively?
I would say that PlaySafe ID is in the same fight as anti-cheat, but it is not anti-cheat. The reason is we're not doing detection. So we ingest stat traces, information, detections, and reports from either developer native tools or existing anti-cheat solutions, and we decide whether to make an action or a penalty. But the important thing about what we're doing is this one life, essentially. The fact that people can only ever get one PlaySafe ID and that it matters that they keep it clean, that they're not caught cheating, hacking, or botting with it. So yeah, we're not anti-cheat, we're accountability. We sit as a slightly different layer or alongside anti-cheat. We're in the same fight, but slightly different.
Sure. So why will PlaySafe work where the other anti-cheat solutions have failed? Because right now, especially across FPS games in particular, and specifically excruciatingly within the extraction shooter genre, cheating is just such a massive problem. It's only got worse and worse and worse. And even the best developers still have cheaters there, and it's this ongoing fight. And it seems like the anti-cheat guys are just on the back foot and just can't keep up. So why is PlaySafe going to work where all of these other methods have not?
Okay, if you develop a new anti-cheat, what you're doing is you're developing a new tool set for the existing workflow. Okay, and that existing workflow is you have a security team or an anti-cheat team. There are thousands and thousands of developers on the other side of things that are developing cheats. You have to be perfect across absolutely everything all of the time. Anytime Windows updates, anytime an SDK updates in the game, anytime anything changes in the infrastructure or architecture at any point, there's new vulnerabilities that open up. So you have thousands, tens of thousands of very, very talented, very hardworking, because this is the misconception, right, is that cheat devs are stupid or they're dickheads or whatever. They're not. They're incredibly talented devs who, for the most part, aren't bad people. They're very smart devs who are business people that want to make a shitload of money. And they can make a shitload of money by developing cheats and selling them. It's a massive industry. So on the anti-cheat side of things, you have to be perfect on every single front, all the time, every single day, every single minute. And on the cheat dev side, you just have to find one good vulnerability one time, and they have much more resource and a much more vested interest to be able to find it. And this is why the cat and mouse exists. On the second side of things, there's no accountability. So if you're caught cheating, and I've seen dozens and dozens of interviews where streamers have interviewed cheaters, and people will literally, the cheaters will literally have like a notepad document with hundreds of account credentials. And they're like, oh, if I get caught, I'll just copy and paste the account credentials in, and I'm literally back 20 seconds later. Like, so they're the two issues with this. What we're looking to do is break the wheel. We're looking to break that cycle, right? We're trying to change the rules of engagement. It's You can't just get caught, create a new account, and come straight back in. It now matters if you're caught cheating. And then, yeah, that's fundamentally it. We're not looking to be a new anti-cheat, a new tool, a new thing that just continues this cycle. We're looking to fundamentally change the way that make cheating matter.
Yeah. So I think just to make it really clear, then, if you say everything's set up in a game, how exactly then do you go about doing that as a user? You know, if you're a user, you say, okay, I want to be playing in this safe environment. What exactly do I have to do?
There's a couple of different ways to enter the user flow. So you can do it either via a game that's integrated with us. You can click a button and then create an account, or you can visit our website directly, which is PlaySafeID.com. You then create your account. So you can do that via Google, via Discord, or via entering an email and getting a magic link. Once you create your account, you're asked to verify. So this is all done on the Onfido SDK. So it's done on your mobile. You take a picture of a photo ID and you take a selfie. We then hash the photo ID and delete it. So no document is stored. It's completely gone. And the photo, the selfie, that's stored on the Onfido side of things. And that's because they have a product called None Faces. So anytime a new person comes in to verify with a PlaySafe ID, basically we check the face. Have we ever seen this face before, either on a photo ID or on a person? And secondly, has that document ever been seen? Because once the document's inputted into the hashing algorithm, the hash would match any previously seen documents. So we don't need to store any of the data, but we know if that document's been seen. So these are the two processes by which we're able to understand, has someone ever gone through this process before? But yeah, basically you just create an account, you verify yourself with a quick photo ID and a selfie. You connect your PlaySafe ID to the game. So all of the games that are integrating us have a button. You click the button, you enter your credentials, the connection happens. And then you're able to choose to play normally, just exactly as you are today, or you can choose to play in PlaySafe Protected or PlaySafe Verified matchmaking, where you'll only play with other verified people who haven't been caught cheating, hacking, or botting. So sorry, I went into quite a lot of detail there, but that's kind of like the full thing.
Yeah, that's fine. And so I think from this point, you know, people understand that, okay, you've got to, you know, use your real ID. Your account is basically linked to you. It's one of the only things that you can't spoof, right? That's like one of the biggest problems that we see with the anti-cheat stuff, is that you can spoof your location, you can VPN to somewhere else, you can change your hardware IDs, all of this stuff can be changed except for you yourself. So what exactly is it then that stops cheaters just making a new PlaySafe ID? Because that's the underpinning to the whole system, that you can only have one ID and that's it. So what's to stop a cheater then from making another PlaySafe ID?
Yeah, so at the point that, let's say I'm a cheater, and let's say that I've been caught cheating with my PlaySafe ID and I want to make a new one for myself. The moment that they go through the account creation process, the moment that their ID or their face is flagged as having been seen before, Onfido basically don't post back to us, or they post back to us and say, don't create a PlaySafe ID because they've been seen before. So that person is essentially burnt. Now, that being said, penalties are proportionate and they vary depending on what was done, the amount of evidence, the trust score of the user, and the trust score of the developer. So it's not that that person's banned permanently. They might be banned for 3 months, for example. So it's not that they're unable to play in PlaySafe Protected matchmaking again. It's that they have to serve that penalty in full and they can't create a new PlaySafe ID or come back in. When we're doing when a user's doing new account connections, for example, so let's say that you're connecting to game X for the first time, we have some cool stuff on our side to be able to detect suspicious activity on the account, be that change in hardware ID, IP, or potentially it's just we're doing it's a random spot check, and we trigger something called the selfie reauth process. So we lock the account, the person has to take a selfie again, and that selfie has to match the original on the Onfido side. Again, this is all handled by Onfido, and they only notify us if that match was successful. So if, for example, you bought a PlaySafe ID online, or you ask someone to create one for you, the moment that you then try to do that connection of that PlaySafe ID to a game on your own tower, different IP, different hardware ID, different, suspicious activity triggered, it would lock the account and you would actually have to have your face on a 2-minute code. So yeah, we've put steps in place to stop the institutional selling, buying, trading, and cracking, as well as generally improve the account security of a PlaySafe ID, because it matters, right? This is your kind of like one life for games. It's our duty to make sure that this is as safe and as secure, and people can't steal your account or buy accounts.
Yeah, you preempted my next question, which was, on the next level, what was to stop cheaters from buying a PlaySafe ID online. But as you're saying, you've got to re-verify if anything happens, or if there's any change between the account. Somebody has an account out in, I don't know, let's just say India, for example, and then you use it here. Well, I'm going to have to somehow re-verify my the face of the person who made the account in the first place, and if it doesn't match, then you're just not going to be able to get in. So presumably this raises the bar, right?
It raises the bar massively. And the next logical question is, well, what about deepfakes, right? Because, well, can't you just spoof someone's face? So because the initial verification and each selfie reauthors, they're triggered, it's forced cross-device on a mobile device, and it's all handled by the Onfido SDK. They actually control the camera settings and a bunch of stuff on the phone. So it can change the hue, it can change the focus. So it's able to detect is what the image that's coming in, does that match the camera settings that are set on the device? So that's one of the many clever, cool ways that they fight image injection, device injection, deepfakes. So it has to be a real person. There has to be a liveness check. The person has to match the document, and the document has to be legitimate. This isn't like a little silly age verification where Death Stranding can fake it. This is a full KYC check that's used for banks and insurance companies. And Onfido do this for Revolut and major banks and major insurance companies and stuff. This is proper identity verification tech and security. We're just looking to introduce it to gaming to keep games fair and safe. Yeah.
Yeah, I did actually read one of I think it was the Onfido annual report talking about this stuff, the deep faking, and across the last 3 years with the huge spike. Because when I've been talking to people about it, there's a lot of questions about, well, what about deep fakes? You can just fake these systems, and I think people misunderstand how difficult that is, and we're kind of, from my perspective, raising the fight from devs versus the cheaters up to the next level, which is at the level of international banking and anti-fraud, where again there's huge money to be made there as well, but we're kind of you're raising the stakes up to this new level.
And the security and the infrastructure and the architecture and the everything. It's not just raising the stakes, it's raising the technology and security side of things as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. As you said, they've got some, from what I've read, some amazing tech about countering these things, and as you say, changing the camera settings in real time. It has access to the camera, so it can change the focus. It can see whether it's actually a real camera or not. It needs access to all these settings for it to actually be able to work, which is pretty cool tech. Honestly, it's definitely been some interesting stuff. So I guess these guys are at the top of the game on that fight, which it will be a fight, right? If you'd used their system from 3 years ago, it probably would be nowhere near as good as it is today, because they've had to deal with all this deepfake stuff. I mean, do you know, because obviously accounts will slip through these things, do you know what the rates of kind of I guess it's hard to measure, but is there any information about how good these systems are in sort of the modern environment, even within banking, for example?
Not off the top of my head. I don't have
Yeah.
because what I don't want to do is throw out my best guess number, because I'm now officially being a spokesperson for our partner and their tech, and I don't want to get it wrong. But I've been down to their offices. I've had a tour of their fraud lab. I've seen their security teams and their investigative teams, and it's insane. They are an enormous company that work with some of the biggest banks on the planet. They do these checks for tens and tens and tens and tens of millions of people. And one of the things that makes me laugh as well is occasionally I'll see a comment online which is, "Oh, but your partner's going to get hacked now they're working in gaming," and I'm like, "Bruh." They do this for Revolut and stuff like that. You don't think there's ever been an incentive for people to attack them with all of anyway? Yeah. So no, they're a solid partner and they're very effective tech.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So I think let's just park Onfido for a second, because I want to talk about them in a bit more detail in a little bit. But first, just about sort of bring it back to where we started the whole sort of loop
Sure.
here, about more the basics on PlaySafe to begin with, because we will cover this. It's important stuff, obviously. One question that I've had a lot, or seen a lot around, is, what if I just don't want to use a PlaySafe ID? Will I just not be able to play the games that I've bought? What happens to people who, for whatever reason, they listen, they read all the stuff and they listen to everything, listen to the whole interview, and they just decide, look, it's not for me. I don't want to do it for whatever reason. What happens to these people?
100% optional system. You can verify yourself and you can play and play safe protected matchmaking, or you can carry on exactly as you are today. And it actually works the other way as well. You can verify with the PlaySafe ID and then still play normally, right? It's not like once you verify yourself, you're locked into PlaySafe and you can't go the other way. It's just people who aren't verified can't come into the PlaySafe side. So it's 100% optional. You don't need to do it. When no one's forcing you to do it. It's just if you're fed up of cheating and hacking and botting and you want to have the fairest experience that you can when you come on and play, this is the way to do that. And you can opt into it and you can join it and you can have a great time, or you can carry on as you are today. That's it. It's
Yeah.
up to you.
I think the next logical question that people who are kind of more on the fence ask at this point is saying, okay, well, if it's optional, the implication there is there's two sets of servers. Does this mean that we're splitting the player base in these games? You know, especially if the game is a bit more niche. Or I mean, even if you think about Escape from Tarkov later on in the wipe, you know, there may only be. It depends on the time, right? But if you're out in a lower, if you're not playing at like the EU US peak, you know, it's like 8 p.m. or 8 p.m. to sort of 11 p.m. like my time here in the UK, or yours as well. You know, if you're out in Asia, for example, where there's like a lower player population, there may only be a few thousand people online. Where if like half of those are in PlaySafe and half of them in the base game, is that going to split the player base and make matching times longer and that kind of thing?
There's actually a really weird thing that happens with matchmaking, and it's very counterintuitive. But if you half the volume of players, it doesn't double the matchmaking time. There's weird thresholds that happen. And basically, it depends on some total player pool that's available to go into a match, how many people are currently in a match, average length of a match, so how long it takes for those people to then be available to rematch, and the number of variable filters and how lenient the matchmaking is to be able to group people together. But yeah, it's fascinating. But it's one of those things that there's clear thresholds where matchmaking gets impacted, and it's like you have to get to actually really really small numbers before splitting the player base actually significantly increases matchmaking time. It's very weird, but it's not a linear. If you split the player base in half, matchmaking's doubled for everyone. It doesn't work like that. It's weird, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've no experience with the back end of matchmaking. I think especially from the Tarkov world, we've all got a sort of general sense, just as a user trying to experience getting into scav matches when the wipe happens, for example, which is basically impossible, even though there's lots of players, you know, and there's certain maps that you can get into more easily than others. Factory, for example, which kind of goes back to what you were saying about, you know, the speed, the cycle of the servers. Those are at least
Now,
the length of the match is at least half the time.
yeah, no, it gets interesting when you talk about like the scav side of things, because you're not trying to match like 12 people together or 14 people together. What you're trying to do is you're trying to essentially put one person or one group of people into one server. So it's a 1-for-1 match as opposed to and what current raids are at a point of progression or enough time has passed and have met the conditions to enable somebody to come in. So you're looking at instead of like putting 14 people together, spooling up a fresh instance, throwing them all in, you're looking at what certain raids meet the right conditions for people to be able to join those raids. That's where it starts to become a little bit more finicky on that side of things. And I think that's why that sort of matchmaking is more impacted. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just assume everything works as you say it will. Everything's going to be, you know, it's integrated into a particular game. And the devs go, look, this is just working great for a new game. Let's say a game that isn't out already. It is expensive to run two sets of servers potentially. What happens if the devs just say, well, we only want to run PlaySafe matchmaking?
I don't think that will happen, because I think that there will always be a portion of players who want to dick about, who want to try things out, who want to try mods, who want to, you know, cheat, who want to mess about, or those that just refuse to. They don't want to verify themselves just on principle. They just disagree with the idea of verifying themselves, even if it means, let's say that we prove ourselves out, we become an industry standard. Everybody has a better time in PlaySafe protected matchmaking. It's a universal fact that there are less cheaters. Let's say we get to that point, there will still be a proportion of people who are just like, I'm just not going to verify myself to be able to do this for gaming. And studios all make their decisions based on money. That's fundamentally what everything comes down to. What are we going to put into our sprints? What stuff gets priority and focus? What stuff actually gets done or what doesn't get done? All comes down to money. So if adding in PlaySafe means that a proportion of players play more, spend more, are happier, retain better, churn less. It's a sensible business decision to be able to put PlaySafe in. It makes sense. But would it be a sensible business decision for maybe 25, 35, 45% of the player base that don't use PlaySafe? Does it make sense to get rid of that entirely, and potentially cull the revenue that's generated and the satisfaction from that pot of players? And I don't think that will ever make sense. So I think it'll always run concurrently. You do raise an interesting point, though, about the potential for having to pay for two sets of servers. So we don't recommend that. I mean, they can do if they want to neaten it or whatever. But deciding if players are grouped on what server they go into happens at the matchmaking stage. You don't necessarily, unless you're like World of Warcraft or RuneScape, where you have to have like a specific persistent world, and that would need its own server for sure. But if you're talking about like an FPS or anything with kind of matchmaking, you can have a non-PlaySafe ID server, just a regular server, and you can just match PlaySafe users and put them in that server. Like, you don't need a PlaySafe protected server. You just need to make sure the people going into that server are match-made as only PlaySafe ID users. So there shouldn't be any increase in overhead or infrastructure or architecture on the development side, because they already have all of the servers for all of their player base. They're just deciding what pods to group people together based on this additional filter.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. I hadn't really thought about that. That definitely makes sense. Okay, so a question that I had, I actually hadn't seen this around, but a question that I had is around kind of closet cheaters, for example, because PlaySafe ID, you know, I'm obviously a big backer of it. I think that it's going to be really the only way that this stuff is going to work out. But one of the not really an issue, but just one of the facts of life is that the number of cheaters in PlaySafe servers presumably isn't going to be zero, because there are some people who either have undetectable cheats or they're closet cheating, you know, people who are using kind of like ESP type things like wall hacks, where it's very hard to actually tell. They don't necessarily get banned by the game, and they're in the game for a very long time because they're quite sophisticated. They don't really receive any reports, because there's some people who, you know, if you're an experienced cheater, right, you can kind of like play in a way that seems normal, but you've got that advantage, and there's not really any way that you're actually going to that you're going to lose. And without any kill cams or anything like we have in Tarkov, it's like very hard to know sometimes from a player's perspective, you know, who's who. So there's less reports, and these people are going to slip through. What about these cheats that don't get detected within the PlaySafe matchmaking?
I have two answers to that. First of all, in the way that gaming is today, that problem will always exist and it will never get better. In the PlaySafe side of things, as these people do eventually get caught and do face penalties, it will only get better. So it will be a self-cleaning system. So that's the first portion. The second portion is there are amazing new players into the anti-cheat space, like AnyBrain, who have been around for a couple of years. They're purely a heuristic gameplay review. Like they sit in the game and they're looking at movement, mouse movement. They're looking at pathing, tracking, mapping, and they build kind of like a movement profile for a user. And then they see how that changes over time and what consistencies and patterns there are against caught cheaters. So there are really, really cool players in the space. And I assume that Easy AntiCheat and BattleEye and other players and stuff are implementing similar kind of technology and figuring this out as well. But there is an awful lot more sophistication now to being able to catch suspicious or very, very obvious cheating behavior. Like if you have someone that moves their mouse in a way that just isn't natural. If you have someone that always paths to the high traffic areas in every single map, even if they're not consistently high traffic areas that you would expect. If you have people that average time from distance travel to kill is always really, really high, that would be indicative of ESP and that they're always able to find people and they're always able to move people and they have information that they don't know. So there are really, really cool people that are looking now at developing these sorts of things, and they're proving out to be really effective. So that's half of the fight. Is, as I mentioned, we don't do the detection, we do the accountability from that. But the detection is always getting better and more sophisticated. I'm a huge advocate for anti-cheat. It gets a really bad rep. People say it doesn't work. People say that, you know, they're bad companies, that it's a joke and whatever. It's not. Anti-cheat is absolutely fantastic, and anyone working in that space is doing God's work. It is an unwinnable fight. They are Sisyphus permanently pushing a boulder up a hill, and the boulder keeps on rolling them over. It sucks, but they're doing a great, great job. And as their tools get more and more sophisticated, that's a huge part of the fight. But the second part is, as these tools get more sophisticated, as more developers implement some of these more heuristic detection models, closet cheaters will get caught more. It's just on the PlaySafe ID side of things, they won't just be able to create a new account and come straight back in. Like they face that punishment. Sorry if that was a waffly answer, but
No, that's fine. I had one probably quite easy question actually to sort of end this little section, which is someone was asking me, what if I have multiple accounts? Say, for example, I've got a standard account and I've got an EOD account. I use one to play hardcore on it. Like, can I link both of these up to PlaySafe ID? How does that work exactly?
Yes, you can.
Easy answer. So so they're all linked together from any number of accounts you may have for a particular game.
I don't care if you have 50 accounts or one account. What I care is you can only ever have one PlaySafe ID. So if you're caught cheating on any of those 50 accounts, you can't come back into PlaySafe ID on any of those 50 accounts until your penalty is served. That's all I care about. Now, there are some games that have incredibly strict anti-smurfing policies. So the highest likelihood of us, if and when we get to work with those guys, is you will only be allowed to connect one of your game accounts to a PlaySafe ID, and that'll be their policy. But for games that don't have a very strict anti-smurfing policy, we don't care. Like, if we worked with World of Warcraft and you've got 6 World of Warcraft accounts, connect all 6. Have a great time, have at it. We don't care. We just care that games are fair, fun, and safe, not that you can only have this one account.
Cool. Okay, so the next section is, I don't know if it's going to be too long, but it's one that I see popping up all the time, which is about false positives. It's something that people really worry about. It's people worry about that anyway, because you get these things, they do happen. We've had our fair few scandals within EFT about groups of players being banned or streamers being banned and then unbanned, and some people being banned because there's a clip that looks, but then it's just like weird desync or the server messed up or something. It looks like someone's flying out of a window, but it was actually a streamer, and they have their own side. They can prove their innocence, right? Which the regular player can't. That's been a big point of sort of anxiety, I think, within the player base. If you don't record everything and you get banned, then nobody knows you either, then you're just screwed. So what happens if somebody does hypothetically get banned unfairly in one of these games, and then I guess that flows down to PlaySafe and they get an infraction on their account? How does that work?
I'll take it from the very top, if you don't mind. I'll take it from the systems that we have to prevent the false bans in the first instance, and then the use case thereafter, if that's okay. So first of all, we have a trust score that we build on each user. So how long have you been a PlaySafe ID user? How many games have you got connected? Roughly what's the number of game sessions that you've played? And we're able to calculate that, because every time you go to matchmake, the developer calls our API and says, does this person have a valid PlaySafe ID? So if we know on average a game session is 20 minutes and you've been called 3 times, we know you've played for roughly an hour. So we're able to build this trust score about you. We build a trust score on developers as well. How many bans do they notify us of? How much information are they sending in the packet of evidence? What's the quality of that information? How often have we had to overturn penalties that they've made a mistake on? We have this whole matrix of variables on the developer side. So that goes into the evidence that we receive. And do we want to make a penalty? Or do we just want to put a flag against the account? Like, maybe, this is one that we watch, and if we see this again, it's probably true. Like, there's loads of stuff that goes into this. So we have lots of systems to be able to, we also look at the context of the evidence. We look at the context of the game. We have some really cool stuff. So we have stuff in place to minimize to the absolute maximum the number of false positives that come through. Now, if someone does receive a false positive, there's a couple of things here. First of all, if the game developer's made a mistake, they can basically post to us on our endpoint. We've got an endpoint for overturn penalty. So if they're like, oh, actually, we made a mistake here, they can just overturn it, and then we scrub the penalty from our side. We just go, okay, cool. You made a mistake. All's forgiven. Sorry. On the second side of things, we're now developing a really robust appeals process, which I won't go into the details of how the differences in the algorithms work on the detection side of things versus the appeal side, but it's a slightly nuanced and different set of criteria. So it's looking at it a fresh pair of eyes, and it generates basically kind of like a threshold. And then one of the things that we're looking at doing is having like a manual spot check review of stuff that falls within that threshold of proper gray area. Now, with all of this said, though, there are scandals that happen in false positives, like a certain motherboard gets caught, or, for example, there's an update and something random gets flagged and it shouldn't be. And those are all overturned, like pretty quickly, because there's a huge storm on Reddit and Twitter, and the developer realizes that they fucked up, and usually that's then overturned really quickly. So that's not an issue on our side, because we'll, like I say, overturn all of those PlaySafe ID penalties. And that's only if we decide to issue the penalty based on the trust score and based on the player trust score and based on the context of evidence. We might not even issue a penalty. We don't just trust that a developer says ban someone. We have our own systems in place. But with all of that said, an awful lot of people that cry false positive, a lot of them aren't false positive. Like that's the other variable to it. It's like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, and actually quite a lot of the time it is closet cheaters and stuff like that. Like if you look through stat traces and you dig into it, so false positives do happen, and we've got systems in place to reduce that to an absolute minimum. And then there's the appeals process with the developer, and then if that's overturned, we scrub it, and then we're developing our own appeals process as well. So
Yeah,
I can go into more detail on stuff, but I think I'll stop there. Oh.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. I mean, that it's interesting that you brought up the motherboard thing, because that's one of the bigger Tarkov problems that we've had, where there's a it's like a really specific thing that you would never think of, right? Like manufacturing error with the motherboards. They all came out stamped with the same hardware ID. One person cheats on it, everyone gets banned who has that one run of the motherboard in that particular way. And it took. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily. Well, it's one of those things where, if people hadn't have grouped together, and I can't remember exactly who it was who noticed that, it might even have been the infamous Goat, actually, because I think that's maybe where he even started. But like basically, people started noticing that there was something similar about people that had the same motherboard, etc., etc. But until people did the investigative work, no one was going to get this ban returned over, which is why people are sort of skeptical about these systems, right? So it's good, definitely good that you've got processes in place, right, to look at this stuff and see what the data is. Because I imagine in that, just thinking about that particular situation, I suppose on your side you would have seen a hardware ID style ban, right? That's what Tarkov would have sent to you, presumably, that this person
of a disproportionately high volume. Like all of a sudden there's a batch of hardware ID bans, and also the machine gun thereafter of hardware ID bans is coming in thick and fast. Why is this someone that's spooled up bot traffic from one tower and it's constantly what's going on? Anomalies like that we'd look into, and we'd be like, oh, they all have the same hardware ID, but they all have different IPs. This is kind of weird. And then it would, we would then look into it. And in that instance, we could even then have mentioned it to, for example, BSG in this case. We've noticed this. Is there something wonky going on your side? So that's the thing. The other thing as well, just super quickly, if somebody did get a false positive, and I'm sure it will happen at some point, I'll be lying if I said that no one ever is ever going to get a false positive. The thing is the bans that we issue are proportionate to the evidence that we receive. So if it's your first time getting a false positive, you'll probably only get a suspension for a couple of weeks, and then you'll be able to come back in. So it still sucks, but it's not going to be a really, really harsh penalty on your first offense, depending on what we observe. And the second thing is, you can still go and play normally anyway. Like, right, you could still create a new account and play normally. So it's not that you're banned from all games forever. It's just you won't be able to come back into PlaySafe protected matchmaking or verified matchmaking until that penalty's served. So you're not exodused from gaming. I just thought that was it's an important point to mention.
I guess that's quite sort of a funny point about it, which is that, imagine the hardware situation happened again in a different format or something. Your biggest issue is the fact that you're banned by BSG, not banned by
your game account is still getting banned. Yeah, your game account is still getting banned by the developer, immaterial of us. And there's going to be cases where a developer says, we caught this person, we banned their account, this is the details, and we don't issue a ban to the PlaySafe ID, and there's a number of ways that this can work.
I do think that's one. I just want to add. I think that's one thing that I hadn't thought of originally when I started looking into you guys, that I really, really like about this system, and it's sort of aligned. It's parallel to what you were saying about we may see all of these bans go through, and it's the bans are suspicious, so we'll go back to BSG and say, hey guys, there's something going on. But you've got this potential for a much bigger context on a player. BSG sees us playing EFT. Activision sees people playing Call of Duty on that one account. BSG doesn't know who is who, etc., etc. Whereas you see both my hardcore account and my regular EFT account together. You see my Battlefield 6 account. You see my Call of Duty account. You see my whole history, right? You've got a much richer set of information and data to draw upon than any individual dev. And that is actually powerful in and of itself, even for solving dev level problems, because you kind of sit above this whole layer and can provide more information potentially if there's something going wrong, which is something that I hadn't really appreciated fully when I first started looking into it.
It's really cool. Yeah, we get a view of people across lots of games in a large span of time, which is why we have this user trust score. And if, for example, you're connected to all of the accounts that you mentioned, you've never been caught for anything, you've never had a flag for anything, you're never suspicious on anything, and then you're caught as part of like a mass hardware ID ban wave, we're going to be like, well, we quite trust this person, and
Mm.
they've never displayed any kind of bad behavior in all of these games. And then if it's like a really specific stat trace that's sent to us, it was a logic-based detection. Memory was altered in this way. It was clearly aimbot, and here's all of the information. Then it's like, oh yeah, well, he's caught with his pants down. Like he was obviously cheating. But if it's just we banned this person because of their hardware ID, we're just like, well, why?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. So I think I know the answer to this already, but just kind of for completeness, I want to just ask it, which is
Please.
what happens if my game account gets hacked? For example, let's say I've played Battlefield 2, 10 years ago or whatever it might be, and that was PlaySafe ID connected, hypothetically, and that account gets hacked and someone takes over control of that account, and could they potentially get me banned across all games I'm playing?
One of the flags that we have for suspicious activity is what's the pattern of playing games in different games based on the developers pinging our API. So if you played Battlefield 2 10 years ago and you haven't touched it in, let's say, like 8 years, 10 years, right? And then you randomly come onto it and we see a cheating offense come through. Well, first of all, we would probably do a selfie reauth, right? We'd be like, hey, you haven't played this in so long. We just want to double check it's you. You scan a QR code, you take a selfie, it unlocks. You can now play, but we now know it's you. Your account's secure. Everything's great. If someone hacked your account and they jumped on and they went to play Battlefield 2, it'd trigger that. You'd get an email saying, here's the code for you to do this. And you'd go, fuck, that's not me. Your whole PlaySafe ID gets locked until you verify yourself. And then you can either, you'd get in contact with our support and be like, no, or you could go to the platform and you could disconnect that game. Or there's, you can go and reset your password because it'll say the game that you're doing, it's connected to your EA Connect, and you know that there's a vulnerability. A couple of different things there, but on the second side of things, if it was a game, let's imagine that someone managed to bypass all of those systems, which they can't. But let's say they were able to get in and they were able to play and they were able to rage cheat like fuckers, and gets banned. Again, we would look at the evidence that's received. We would look at your trust score, and it would probably be like, oh, what's going on here? This is a game that you haven't played in 8 years. You've never been caught cheating on anything else. And all of a sudden you were caught really explicitly rage hacking in this one random game. What's up? So that would be contextual at that point. But the safeguards that we have in place should prevent that from happening in the first instance. Because it would be different hardware ID that they're accessing from. It would be a very different IP, most likely, that they're accessing from. It's a game that you haven't played in 8 years. There's a bunch of suspicious activity triggers here that would likely protect the account.
That's what I figured, right? And it's like, I think I've said previously, the idea of ID online is very contentious, right? And I don't think anybody particularly wants to be submitting their information. But how else do you deal with situations like this, for example, without saying, yes, here's my face, you use the special camera tech or whatever, like this is actually me. It's like the only thing that you really have as a defense against this kind of thing. It really is, in my opinion, the only way. I've never been able to think of any other way of doing it, really.
For the me too, obviously, which is why I'm here and doing this. But for the absolute record, right? Like this whole journey started 2 years ago when me and a bunch of my mates, we jumped on a couple of different games on an evening, and everything we came across rage cheats and alt F4'd. And this whole idea spawned from us as consumers of games content being like, what is a legitimate way that this problem can actually be solved? And what is something that we would all be willing to do? Like it was me, it was a bunch of my mates. Some of them work in tech, a lot of them don't. They're ordinary blokes that work ordinary jobs. And it's like, what do we all feel comfortable doing? Like, what would you guys do? How would you be willing to go through this process? And it's why we've built this to hash and then delete the ID. So the ID isn't stored anywhere. The biometric store, but it's stored behind a company that has all of the biometrics and all of the identity documents for major banks and insurance companies. We random and anonymize the PlaySafe ID, so it can't be tracked or linked to you. We've put all of these systems in place because I didn't want to link my passport directly to a game account. Fuck that. But would I verify in a way that then it's deleted so I can have this one random anonymized ID? Would I link that to stuff so it matters if I'm caught cheating? And that was the overwhelming yes, that actually sounds like a good system that people would be willing to do. So it's 100% contentious, the idea of having to verify to play games, but we're not asking you to, we don't share any information with the game developer. you're not verifying with the game developer. You're not giving your passport to BSG or EA or Ubisoft or whatever. You're doing it with Onfido through us, and then it's deleted, and then you get this one random anonymized PlaySafe ID, and that's the thing that you're connecting. And I shouldn't really say this, but I'm going to, so my CTO will shout at me. We don't even share your real PlaySafe ID with each game developer. You have a root PlaySafe ID in our system, and then we create a further randomized PlaySafe ID for each game connection that you do. So game devs can't even track you across multiple games or multiple environments. And if anyone was able to find your PlaySafe ID in one game, it's just that PlaySafe ID in one game. So we've really taken it every step to detach any personally identifiable information, to detach any link, and then further detach any tracking actually the PlaySafe ID level as well. So it's contentious. So we've just tried to make it the best that it could ever possibly be so we can solve this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main point for me about this, since speaking to you for over the last couple of weeks and seeing the conversations and having conversations with my community about being like, look, if this is really the only solution, you and the team have kind of thought of every possible way to minimize the issues that may come around it. And I think that is important for you to build trust in that way with people. I think without that, people won't want to use it. But I think seeing it, saying, look, it sucks, it's unfortunate that this is what it has come to get rid of cheaters and to try and minimize the problem as much as possible. But despite that, we're going to do everything in our power to make you feel comfortable, right? We're going to try to make you feel comfortable about, the information that you are sharing, but retain the core of what it needs to have to make sure that the system actually functions, basically.
100%.
So I think that will be comfortable. That will be comforting to a lot of people, I think.
I hope so. And, selfishly for me, two things. First of all, I want to have my own PlaySafe ID. I want to use it in all of the games that I play, and I want to be able to play this way with all of my mates so we can have proper gunfights and have proper fair matches and not have bullshit. So I built a system for me and my mates that they would all be comfortable with and that I would be comfortable with. And secondly, very selfishly, I want this to fucking work. Gamers are smart. We're a real smart bunch. We're a real skeptical bunch. We'll dig through the weeds. We'll dig through the forums. We'll nitpick and try and pull it apart in every single way possible. It's why we've been 100% honest and transparent about everything that we're doing. We've put all of these systems in place. We've tried to account for every single variable that we possibly can, because you guys are smart. Like you're gonna pull it apart, and we want to build a system that you can trust, that will protect you, will protect your information, will deliver as much as possible a cheater-free experience. We'll break the cycle of the cat and mouse between cheat devs and game devs, and give a meaningful weapon in the fight. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, if you're doing anything of any worth, you will get a Reddit thread about you, or 3 or 30.
Oh yes. Yes.
Okay, no so last couple of things within this sort of false positives and that kind of realm.
Yes.
Where do you guys draw? Because different devs actually have different takes on this. Where do you draw the line on like hardware and software advantages on your side? How do you see it? Because a game, some games are more cut and dried actually, but Tarkov has these kind of funny grey areas where BSG, if BSG are not, people don't necessarily ask BSG, and if BSG are asked about certain things, they will say, oh no, it's against TOS. Like their sort of default reflex action is to say it's against TOS, because they can't, I mean, practically speaking, right, I kind of actually feel for them a little bit, and that they can't really say anything else, because if they do say, oh yes, this is fine, and then people kind of like pull the thread and
everyone will do it.
Yeah, kind of thing. So it's a bit tricky, but many questions are sort of unasked about this. So I think we had one. It actually didn't end up with anybody getting banned, but it could have been, and it was about I forget the specific name now, but it was about LUTs. That was it. It was about monitor recoloring through Windows, and there was a program that a guy made called Artist War, and he built this with this app which allowed you to just like recolor the basically the LUT spectrum on your monitor. So it's basically giving you a sort of very powerful version of post effects recolor kind of deal. And BSG said, well, this has kind of got out of hand. Like, we don't really want people to do it. We're not going to ban anybody, but like if you've got his app open, the game won't launch, for example. But it could easily have gone another way where they banned people for that kind of thing. Like, where do you guys like draw the line on stuff that's sort of against TOS, but it's not like, is it cheating? Is it not cheating? You end up down these like crazy rabbit holes on Reddit with people saying, well, if you think this is cheating and that's cheating, well then changing the brightness on my monitor, well then that's cheating. It's like, Where do
It's
you draw the
not
line on this?
completely changing the whole color spectrum of your monitor to be able to highlight players and dull foliage versus just turning up your brightness. It's not the same thing. But well, bygones be bygones. We'll drop that one. Um, if you are if you're running software that enables you to see people through walls, if you're running software that changes your character stats, functionality, or capabilities, so increasing hit points, removing damage, being able to fly, um, Zims and Cronus, anything that you plug in that's hardware for you to enable you to run scripts to like remove recoil, that's what is. I mean, there is there's a really interesting deep conversation here. Because there's what is humanly possible and capable, right? That's clearly cheating. Zero recoil and guns, not possible. Being able to fly, like in the game, it's not a possible thing within the game. Doubling your hit points or making it that you can't take damage, removing full damage, not possible in the game. Being able to see people through walls, being able to see where all loot is, loot hoovering stuff straight to where, not things. They're all clearly cheating. Having radar, having ESP, having DMA set up to try to make yourself as undetectable as possible, clearly cheating. Plugging in devices or boxes that have preloaded scripts, etc., clearly cheating. I think it then gets more interesting, and this is where I'm more edge on the side of caution with it, is changing legitimate settings, like editing, like turning up your brightness on your computer, for example. That's not cheating, but you can do it. Changing the performance settings in NVIDIA, as you launch it, being able to tweak the settings to optimize your gameplay, not cheating. So if it's possible for people to do it and it's not inherently giving a non-humanly available advantage, I think that's where we draw the line. So most commonly, aimbot, ESP, radar, scripts, I think are the core four that we really care about.
Yeah, I think it probably is some niche scenarios where this stuff might exist, because there's certain things I know in EFT that BSG take a dim view of, but they don't have any way of either detecting it or mainly the fact that they just don't have any way of detecting some of these things. For example, I mean, for example, now, I mean, it's not it's not really. It's arguable, right? It's like the transit system for the moment. If you Alt F4 in the transit, it takes you back to your stash. But BSG have basically said we don't want people doing this. It's an unintended feature of the game. Is it a bug? Well, they can't really remove it because if people crash, then they lose all their stuff, and it really sucks. So they've left it in kind of for that reason. And they've basically said, look, if we see streamers do it, not that they actually have, but they've said like we will ban you, right? And so that's. I don't even know what would that look like on your end, like someone who goes and manually bans somebody who's like really just taking the piss with some in-game system. It's how does that come through to you guys?
I think exploits like that within a game are at the discretion of the developer to deal with. That's not inherently someone cheating. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I've bought a Zim or a Cronus, or I've downloaded some software, turned off my antivirus, restarted my tower, updated BIOS in a certain way, launched it again, launched the cheats in a certain way, launched the tower in a certain way, whatever. It's that you've Alt F4 going through transit, and okay, it's shit, but it's that's
It's
is
one of
kind
those
of
things
what
kind
it
of on the
is.
dev for solve, right? It's like it's a dev level problem, I think, personally. But how do you sort of see exploit? Like if someone was banned for a dev has a way of detecting it, for example, like people leaning through a bit of the map and remove it because of culling or something, they can like see through the walls, but it's not, they haven't done anything, there's no software, like, and they get banned for that. Would you guys ban for that? Like how do you see exploiting from your side?
Depends on the stat trace that's sent to us, and it depends on a lot of variables. I think that's an issue for the dev to solve. It's like if you have a clipping issue where people can poke out the map and see where everyone is, I mean, you need to fix that. Like I mean, it is cheating and it is shit, but I don't think that necessarily that's. I mean, it depends. It depends on lots of things.
It does. Yeah, it does. Okay, fair enough. I think we touched on this very quickly for this last section on false positive stuff. So how will you balance legitimate the few, and this is the issue, right? It's actually a big problem because it's the small number of legitimately unlucky players who get false banned versus the mountain of just people who are just lying and say, oh, I wasn't cheating, I've been false banned. I don't know what that ratio is, but I would be surprised if it wasn't like 100 to 1 or worse, right? Of people saying like, cheaters who are trying to spoof their way back in through, your support, whatever, or your process, whatever it might be. Like, how do you even balance that?
We get sent the stat trace and the evidence from the developer, and the one variable that isn't taken account into our algorithms is how loud someone's crying on Reddit. So we've seen what's happened. So you can turn around and say, I wasn't cheating. We can see if you have, or what the evidence is supporting that you have, and be able to make that decision from it. So if somebody legitimately was caught with a false positive, it should be visible that it's edge case, or that we can see kind of what the crack is. And if people have been clearly caught cheating, they can say that they won as much as they want, but we'll be able to see that they were. So yeah, that's it comes down to the trust score of the user, the trust score of the developer sending the penalty, the context of what was caught happening, and the context of the game, and a bunch of other variables. But the big advantage that we have is seeing this, each person over a longer period of time across multiple accounts, across multiple games, to be able to understand, is this likely behavior, and based on the evidence that we observed and the context of that evidence in the game and the trust score of the developer that's saying that this thing happened, should we make that penalty? And ultimately, false positives so rarely happen, but when they do happen, they're usually like really edge casey things that get people caught, because they're not running stuff that's changing memory, that's clearly giving them aimbot or whatever, right? So they'll likely get a penalty for a couple of weeks on their first offense. And I've never been false positived in anything that I've ever played. I don't think any of my friends have ever been false positived in anything that we've played, and we've all played tens and tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hours of everything. So I'm kind of jaded, and maybe there's like a confirmation bias here, but it's like, if I have a group of people that I know that play consistently all the goddamn time across everything, across every different anti-cheat, across every single kind of detection method, and none of us have ever been caught in anything, like, they false positives obviously do happen, but it's just in my experience, it's people that actually. One of my mates was caught cheating, and he played the whole false positive thing. And then a couple of weeks later, he's like, "Oh no, I was actually cheating." And it's just like, well,
Crazy.
there you go, you prick. Like, that's why are you trying to save face? Just own it. Just be like, "Oh yeah, I was a prick. I was cheating, and I got caught." And fuck you. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying even if there's overwhelmingly more cheaters who are trying to come back in and come through, their situations are going to be so much more cut and dried, and the numbers of cheaters who are going to look like an edge case is going to be very small in comparison to the people who are pretty obvious and just trying to get back in. And so the people who really are unlucky, because there will be a few people, will kind of they won't have that profile of being definitely cheat banned for aimbot or DMA or whatever it might be.
It'll be something heuristic based or edge case or something weird and wonky, and then there's the opportunity for that to get overturned. And in the worst case scenario where it doesn't get overturned, because it'll be something weird and wonky and it'll be so edge case, the proportionality of the ban will be so short that, okay, it sucks, but again, you've already got your game account banned. Immaterial of us, your game account's still been banned. Like, it still sucks for you. Your game account's been banned. But it's just you'd have to wait a couple of weeks before you're allowed to play in PlaySafe Protected again. And sorry, but no system is 100%. We're just batting for 99.999%. Like, we're just trying to make it as good as possible.
Okay. Excellent. Cool. Okay, so I parked Onfido, Entrust, the data stuff a bit early. We started going down that route, but I want to bring that back now and talk about data privacy, zero knowledge verification, all of that kind of stuff, because this is it's a really critical thing for a lot of people. And to understand, I think, again, there's a lot of misconceptions about what happens, where it goes, what's possible, and I think that can go a long way. So just right for the basics of this then. So what information do I have to give? So for example, I've spoken to lots of different people within my community from all sorts of different countries, and actually different countries and different we're talking about these systems being used in banking. Here in the UK, I'm actually pretty used to taking a picture of my driving license and then scanning my face. That actually happens quite a lot here, but the UK's retail banking system is actually quite sophisticated compared to a lot of places. And so many people in my community have never seen that, for example. So what information do I have to give? Just first and foremost, like what can I give? What do I have to give? What's the minimum amount of information that I have to give over?
Email address and date of birth when you're initially creating the account. Then when you actually go through the verification that's handled by Onfido, it's photo ID, and they cover literally every single country except for Iran, North Korea, and there's like 2 others. Like it's global, the level of identity checks that they do. It's brilliant, but it's photo ID and selfie, and it's just photo ID and selfie. And then, as I mentioned, we hash and delete the ID after the fact, and it's just the selfie that's stored for the known faces side of things.
Okay, so yeah, so you don't store any data on PlaySafe users yourself. Well, what do you store then? You just have this hash.
Email address and date of birth and hash.
Okay, fine. So that information goes from the user, it goes to you. You process it in that way, and you end up with this hash. What happens then? So where does the data go from there? So it goes from you onto Entrust Onfido right afterwards.
It happens straight on Onfido. It doesn't go through us to Onfido. It happens straight on Onfido.
Okay.
So at the point that you start doing the verification, you're given a QR code that you have to scan with a mobile device. That invokes the whole Onfido SDK and workflow. The data never comes to us. The hash happens, and then we take the hash and we store it, and then the ID document's deleted. So it doesn't pass through us to Onfido back to us. You scan the QR code, you do it with Onfido, and then Onfido only notifies if the check was successful or not with a hash.
Okay, and so what information are they storing then at this point? Well, now that it's the process is complete.
The biometric, so the selfie. Aside from that, I think a device ID, which is their own internal ID for the device that was used for the workflow in the session, and an IP, and I think that's it.
Okay, fine. So it's the minimal amount of stuff, including the ID that you've actually got, and that's it. So most of it actually sits with them. Is the key point, right?
The only sensitive stuff, which is the biometric, the selfie, sits with them. That's behind their Fort Knox. It's locked there. All we have is the random and anonymized PlaySafe ID, which is just a random string of numbers and letters on our side, and the hash. And you can't reverse hashes. You don't get anything from a hash. It's a random number of series of numbers and letters as well. I can go into what hashing is and how it works, and
just to like close that thing down. So imagine if I then tried. So if for example, I did try to make another PlaySafe ID using my same, or like say I use my passport, for example. I used my driving license one time. I tried to make a PlaySafe ID again using my passport. What actually happens then the second time?
Your face gets caught by known faces in the database of all of the PlaySafe ID client users under Onfido. We have our own sovereign tenancy, as every client does. So any face that's stored on their side is checked, and it would see that your face is there, and it would say, no, don't create PlaySafe ID. This is really annoying because we tried to test this when we built it, and all of our faces were seen, and it made it so hard to test this system because it was working, which was great, but it was so frustrating because we were trying to break it, and we were trying to pen test it, and we were trying to fuck with it, and we really, really struggled. We figured out a solution in the end to be able to do it, and for a couple of select internal users to basically not go through the known faces, and we were able to, try it all out and stuff. But we did have a solid minute where we were just like, have we made a system by which we can't actually now test it because we've been seen it's failing successfully? Or it's succeeding wrongly? I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Okay. So we'll go through this like step by step because people have asked a lot of questions about this. So I think we've already answered this, which is what is to stop PlaySafe ID from selling off all our information? We've sort of answered this already.
There's no information to sell other than the biometric, and if we sold you biometric, we would get sued beyond belief. I would be bankrupt and life would be terrible. the only thing we have is your email address and your date of birth and your PlaySafe ID. So we don't really have anything to sell. The other side of things is the moment that we're caught doing anything nefarious or anything along those lines, we burn all of the trust of every single player globally, and no one will ever use us again for anything. So what was the point? So no.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
That's it.
And then the flip question then is, well, you don't have any of this stuff, fine. What is to stop your third party data provider, Onfido Entrust, what is to stop them from selling the information that they've collected? Because they have the sensitive stuff.
The law. So we are the data controller and they are the data processor, which means they're legally allowed to perform this function for us on our behalf under our explicit instruction, and they're not allowed to deviate or do anything other than that in any regard, any capacity ever. They would have to have our explicit instruction. And that's a very common relationship for any third party with every single person ever, is the data controller data processor relationship. So they just can't.
Yeah,
they
so
really can't.
They're not allowed to use any of that information to sell it, to aggregate it, to sell it off for marketing or any of this stuff.
No. A good example of this is actually a challenge that AntiCheat has. Okay, so if you are an AntiCheat, you can see you, Gigabeef, in game X, and you might also have an account in game Y. The AntiCheat might be in both games. Because it's the data processor for both games, it can't combine its data in a pool to figure out that you're this person over here.
Oh.
That's one of the big challenges with the anti-cheat fight, is because they're all data processors in each game, they can't combine or cross-reference or sell or trade or do anything with their data. They're stuck in their individual sovereign tenancies. I just wanted to kind of explain how that relationship worked in kind of like a. But yeah, it's the same with every third party. They're a data processor. We're the data controller. They legally can't do anything without our explicit permission.
Sure. Okay. I guess I only thought of this now, but I guess like one follow-on is, imagine PlaySafe ID is super successful and then it gets bought by somebody down the line or something. Are you? Would they be able to sell on that information? Is that possible? I get, as you said, it would burn the trust of literally everybody, so no one would ever use it. But
hi, we're gonna spend, hopefully,
that?
let's say it's massively successful, right? Someone turns around and says, we're gonna buy this product for 5 billion. I'm like, okay, maybe I can't say no to that number, and it has to be the reputable company, and it has to be someone that's a bastion for players, and they're reasonable, and I think that they're going to be measured and respectful, etc. Right? There's a bunch of tick boxes in my head before I would sell to a company. I couldn't sell to Epic because of Fortnite. I couldn't sell to Unity because of their ad tech product line. There's only actually a couple of select suitors that I'd be able to sell to that are either outside of gaming, so they wouldn't show any love to any individual gaming company. And I can't sell to one gaming company because giving the reusable digital identity and control of all players to one gaming company would immediately burn it as well. So this is actually quite a tough problem for me to solve in the future, is if we decide to exit one day, who do we exit to so that the thing can continue existing and be respected? With that said, when someone, just the facts of the matter is, if someone buys it, they buy all the IP, they buy absolutely everything, and they're in control of it, they can kind of decide what they want to do. So it's down to me and my board and my shareholders to make a good decision about who we sell to make sure, if we sell in the future, who we sell to make sure that it's respected and exists. But again, the ID is deleted. It's just the biometric on the Onfido side. And then on our side, it's just the email address and the date of birth and the hash. So there's not really anything to sell. My big concern would be if we sold to like a big company that has an ad tech product, that they would start linking more data and information to you to profile you to be able to improve more targeted advertising. That would be my big concern, which is why I'm not going to sell to anyone that has an ad tech solution.
Right. Okay. Fine. So
sorry for the waffle, by the way.
No, that's fine. This is good. This is all good. We need to go through, and this is why I said right at the start, the devil is in the detail for this thing, because it seems, oh, you upload your ID and then it's fine, but it's all of the nitty gritty about what makes this. It's not. Well, it is complex. It's not necessarily complicated. It's a simple idea, but it's detailed in execution. That's the thing. So 100%. All of this stuff is important.
On paper, you verify yourself, no more cheaters. Lovely, simple narrative, wonderful hook. The actual building of this thing and the number of systems and processes and steps that we've had to put in place to make sure that people are anonymized, to make sure that their data is secure, to make sure that there's no tracking on the user side of things, to make sure that it's an effective system on the false positive side, on the appeal side. It's an iceberg. There's a little tip which is lovely, and then there's everything underneath that we've had to build. It's
Yeah, I can imagine. Just even going through the questions and thinking about what to ask you, I can already see how deep the iceberg goes. So legally, assuming everything's above board and all that, and that's all fine. Obviously, a big concern is about cybersecurity, data privacy, that kind of thing, because in this day and age, breaches happen, stuff happens. People, it's illegal for Onfido Entrust to do anything with the data. But what happens if somebody gets in? If somebody did get in, and we talked about what personal information could potentially be stolen, but how should users feel about data breaches? Because a lot of people just don't really want to trust these companies. There's these, we seem to have headlines about data breaches all the time.
The reason I'm pausing is I'm trying to figure out what would be okay to say, because I don't want to detail every single security measure and step that we've put in place, because I don't want to advertise these are all of the attack vectors.
Of course, yeah. Only say what you're able to say, of course.
There are only a select couple of people on our side, and I'm not going to name who, and it's not very many people at all, who have access to any of the sensitive systems or gubbins of how all of this works. It's all behind secure accounts with MFA and additional security on top of that, in terms of physical security and digital security, which I'm not going to detail exactly what those things are. But for someone to be able to get in our side of things, it would involve kidnapping people, stealing physical equipment and property, as well as other steps involved. Like, it's on our side of things, it isn't possible, or it shouldn't be possible, for anybody to be able to phish us, spoof us, brute force us, or directly attack us. So our side of things. And it's the same on the Onfido side of things. I think that's as deep as I'm going to go into that. It's
okay, sure.
Which is why Onfido haven't had any actual people pen their stuff and take data. They had so there's one fun thing on the Onfido side and one fun thing on the Entrust side. Entrust bought Onfido. Onfido is now an Entrust company. On the Onfido side, a client, so like PlaySafe ID, for example, fired one of their employees that had access to the information, and they didn't revoke that person's access. So they were able to download some information. That's shit, but that's not Onfido's fault. That's a really slack internal offboarding and security process of the client.
So it's the client's own data that they took out, basically.
Yes, but it was the ex-employee of the client. The
Yeah.
ex-employee, the disgruntled employee, took the client's own data, which was the problem. The second side of things on the Entrust side is they actually, there's a fun law that was introduced into Illinois, which was basically there had to be an extra consent tick box to be able to process biometric information. And Entrust forgot to add the tick box in on time, so then they got sued because they were processing information that they weren't allowed to process because the consent tick box wasn't passed against the law. So technically that constituted stealing own biometric information, but it wasn't. It was in the eyes of the law. So it depends how you want to look at that. But that wasn't a breach on their side. So yeah, basically, as long as we don't fire someone and then enable them to have full access of all of our data, it's okay.
Yeah, I think people just struggle with just the fact that it's unknowable, right? There's nothing that they can do on their side to prevent something like this, and that so occasionally data breaches do actually happen, and people's information. I mean, I think like PlayStation Network and things like that are like more notorious for it, right? They seem to have one every year, but and people thinking, well, I want to give as little information out as I possibly can because there's no risk-free way to do it, because ultimately these companies are targets for large scale fraud and theft, just because of the information that they've got, and so people are nervous about it, rightly so, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I
So
think
one of the key points to this is, if we don't have the data, it can't be stolen, it can't be sold, it can't be traded, right? So that's why we're deleting the ID side of things, because then that's the most contentious part, I believe, in all of this is the fact that the ID is in the loop. So the fact that that's used, hashed, and deleted means that it can't be stolen, it can't be traded, it no longer exists. It was just used for that initial verification. The really important thing to get all of this to work is the face, as well as having the hash of the ID is helpful for the future. But it's really the face and the known faces side of things, the prevention of being able to create a second PlaySafe ID. So we don't. If let's play devil's advocate, right? Someone gets access to our systems. They have an email address, a date of birth, and as a fun fact as well, date of birth doesn't constitute personally identifiable information. There's some really cool math behind this, but if you have a couple of people in a class of 30, there's like a 50% chance that two of them will have the same date of birth. It's not personally anyway. But you have you have an email address, and you have a date of birth and a hash that can't be reversed in any way. That and maybe you have the connection of that user to the games that they play. That's it. If someone got access to the Onfido side of things, they would have a selfie. And that's it. So it's, even playing devil's advocate, if Onfido did suffer a breach, and just on their side, there's no real valuable information to be gotten from it. And if there was a breach on our side, there's no valuable information to be gotten from it. We don't have credit card information. We don't have billing information. We don't have address. We don't have any of that stuff. If you buy a microtransaction in a game, right, or you've bought a game, they've got your name, your address, all of your information, all of your banking information. They have lots of information on you. We have way less information than that. That's the thing. If we did have a breach, or there was a breach on our side, or there was a breach on the Onfido side of things, it would be the least worst breach that you would need to worry about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people have to remember, that there are some people out there who I've spoken to who they don't have anything out there, and they don't use various services and whatnot, and that's fair enough. I'm not sure if you'll ever convince those people, right? Yeah, exactly. And if you want to do that, then that's fair enough. And I think they are in the vast minority of people, and most people are buying things online, signing up to various services, using WhatsApp and whatever else, other things that most people do. And on that basis, this sits within that same realm of risk as all of these other services, if not lower, as you said, because the amount of information it's not even connected to banking, for example. So,
I mean, just as a fun little tangent, and tell me to shut up if I'm waffling too much, but your phone, okay, has something called an IDFA attached to it, every single phone, which is an ID for advertisers, okay? It has your precise location down to the exact coordinate, your course location in terms of the area, your longitude, latitude, and altitude. It's why if you go traveling, or if you're in an aeroplane, you start getting certain ads that are more targeted towards that, because they know that you've been at a higher altitude for a distance. They know where you are, where you've been, how long you've been there, and when you're coming back. Every website, every app, everything. Like, you are being tracked constantly by this thing. It's why I laughed when and maybe this is a point of contention, although I mean it completely in a joke. When everyone starts saying that Bill Gates is trying to track everyone through the vaccine, and I'm just like, why would they be micro nanobotting you when you have this with you all the time? Like, you're tracking yourself. So, the idea of digital privacy, just me speaking as Andrew, not as PlaySafe ID or whatever, knowing how these systems work and these processes work and the amount of data collection that there is on people and everything, everyone is constantly being tracked and having profiles built on them for the purposes of advertising and business and monetization and capitalism and all of that good stuff. Yeah, like, there isn't a huge amount of privacy anymore. And if you buy anything online, if you use any service online, or if you carry around a phone with you, that ship's already sailed. Now, that's not to say it's already sailed, so you might as well use us, but we don't have anywhere near the information that any of these individual things have. Like, we just have the selfie of you on the Onfido side, which we don't access or use. That's behind their Fort Knox. And then we just have your email address and the date of birth when you were creating your account on our side, and an irreversible hash.
Cool. Okay.
I don't know if that's helpful or not.
But yeah, no, that's good. It's all good. A question that I had last time, though, I think it's I want you to just talk about it again for the purposes of this Q&A, which was, could the PlaySafe software itself get intercepted, for example, so that, you know, for a lot of the way that these cheats work and get around anti-cheat is, you know, they're kind of like man in the middle on the PC. You know, it's like, well, the anti-cheat thinks it's working, but it's actually not, or it's being, you know, there's inputs are being spoofed from outside, that kind of thing. It's like, you know, the old school ways that people used to get Steam games off Steam, where like you'd have an interface layer that acted like Steam, so whenever it went to go and say, oh, it's Steam active, it's just like, yes, it's definitely me. You know, this kind of, is that possible with PlaySafe, or why is it not possible?
It's run server to server. So the game developer has an API key for us, which is secure and that they have. And then when someone goes to matchmake, their server calls our server and says, does this person have a valid PlaySafe ID or not? And that connection happens when the user clicks the button on the client side, they enter with their PlaySafe ID credentials. And then the game developer calls us basically with those credentials, broadly speaking. And then we return the PlaySafe ID to them, and that's what they then use in each call for matchmaking. So there isn't a point at which a person enters. It's our server and their server communicating through this key. So,
so nothing's happening on your own PC.
Nothing's happening on the PC. Nothing's happening on the client side. It's all server to server. Yeah. So I don't think cool. So. I'll be surprised if it happens, but yeah, it should just be a case of it's their server communicating to ours, and then we return the status. Can they play or not? Yes or no. And then that person plays or doesn't.
Okay. I had a couple of questions about younger players. Not everybody is 18. Not everybody has ID necessarily. So what happens with younger players if they are getting integrated into PlaySafe with games that they play? If you're, say, 15 years old, you don't have a driving license, you don't necessarily have, I mean, I know a lot of kids do these days have a passport, but imagine that you don't have either of these documents. Can you still use PlaySafe?
If you're 13 years of age or older and do have a document, you can create your own account. If you're 18 years old or younger and don't have a document, a parent or a guardian can verify themselves, and then they can add you as a child account. So you get your own PlaySafe ID. The child account and the parent account are linked in bans and penalties. This is to prevent people from creating multiple children and just cheat on a child, get it banned, cheat on a child, get it banned, cheat on a child, get it banned, because that would undermine the whole thing. So the child account and the parent account share penalties. And I also believe that adds a certain degree of family pressure to not cheat in games and to play legitimate, because that would suck.
Yeah, I've got my 5-year-old growing up. Imagine she's playing something later on, and then I suddenly can't play EFT, for example. It's just like, what have you done? What have you done?
You're going to be grounded for as long as the PlaySafe ID ban is. That's a fair way of doing it.
I did have some people ask about young players as well, who may just not really, they're kids, right? So they may not really just understand the ramifications or think of the long-term consequences about this kind of thing. If you're caught, if you're like, imagine you're 13 and you come in and you're just messing about and you do get banned on PlaySafe. Is it the same as with an adult? Like, is there more leniency? Is there maybe like an amnesty once someone reaches 18? Like, kind of, what have you got anything around that in particular? Like, how do you feel about that?
I'm not going to go into the details of this one, but yes, we do have stuff in place for this.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I don't want it to be something that could be gamed or attacked. Or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have stuff in place for young users. Yeah.
Cool.
One of the things that we have, I will say this one thing. One of the things that we do have, just because I find it fun to talk about, and we don't advertise this or talk about this. So hey, here we go again. It's we have the fear of God email that goes to the child, and a slightly different version that goes to the parent, saying, we caught you doing this thing, never do it again. Like, it's or we caught your kid doing this thing and it's putting your family account at risk or whatever. I'm not going to go into more detail than that, but we do have an opportunity for learning and consequence for younger users. Yes. All
right. So the final part was the fact that both of us sit here in the United Kingdom is actually quite relevant, because we've had the Online Safety Act here in particular, which has made quite a lot of waves in general for one reason or another. Exactly. Which is sort of, it's both good and bad for you guys, I think, in different ways. Is that people interpret sometimes PlaySafe. But if you've listened to all the rest of it, you'll probably realize why it's different, or why it's not necessarily the same thing. But they're sort of bundled within the same ballpark. And people say, oh, you could use the camera mode in Death Stranding or whatever to get around this UK safety thing, whatever it may be. What are your thoughts about people who say that you're kind of in the same camp here with the Online Safety Act versus like PlaySafe?
First of all, I will be very surprised if maybe I shouldn't say this as well, but I will. I'm going to be honest with it. I'll be surprised if games implement us as their solution to the Online Safety Act directly. The reason for that is we're slightly more friction, and we're a more serious sign up, because we're not the Death Stranding. You just take a quick selfie and then it deletes the selfie afterwards, and it's just doing an age estimation with no liveness check and stuff. We're doing a full and proper KYC check that's used to the standard of professional financial institutions, right? And regulated to the highest degree in order. With that, if I was a game and I wanted to tick this box, why would I implement the most secure and the most friction to get the best result when at the moment this age estimation is being accepted by Ofcom and the government? It's like, why wouldn't I just have the quick selfie that's then scrubbed? It's super, super cheap. It's less friction for users. Why would I put PlaySafe in? So we didn't create this as a solution for this in any way, shape, or form, because otherwise we would have made it way less friction and whatever. We built this as a solution to stop cheating in games. Like I said, a couple of years ago, me and my mates, we all had this problem, and that's where the whole journey started, is how can we make a legitimate solution to reduce cheating in games and bring accountability into gaming? So I don't, unless the law changed or the guidance from off, because the law is really specific. I'm going to go a little bit autistic here, because I've read all of the bill and I've read all of the statements from Ofcom. So it's mandated that any highly effective age assurance, which is what we're discussing here, the verifying the age of user, has to be technically accurate, reliable, robust, and fair. Age estimation, as we've seen through Death Stranding and we've seen through the wildness of degrees, isn't technically accurate or reliable. It falls down in the criteria of the actual bill and the law. But Ofcom, the independent regulator, are currently allowing this because there's a degree of leniency of evolving technology and seeing if age estimation can get good enough, and a bunch of other variables, right? So, yeah, I think that while games can implement a super, super cheap, super quick integration that doesn't actually work super well, but ticks the compliance box, they'll go down that route, and that's what we're seeing. I think it's a nice value add that PlaySafe ID can offer. It's like, we'll keep cheaters out, and for your UK users, we can, to the highest degree of technical accuracy, reliability, robustness, and fairness, comply with the Online Safety Act. But that's not our purpose. It's just a nice happenstance that we're in the right place at the right time. We built a solution for cheating. It just so happens that by going through the verification, we're able to confirm the date of birth that you say when you're creating your account is true as part of the document. It's really funny, actually. Just last little bit of waffle on it, because I know we've covered it too much. But I actually saw someone, I didn't realize this. I saw a comment on Reddit or something where someone said, oh, they've obviously started this company to solve this problem, and they're, they don't actually care about cheating or whatever. And I replied to it, and I was just like, what makes you say that? Like, I can understand you just like gut feeling saying it, but why? And they said, I looked on Companies House and I saw that you registered the company like 2 weeks after the law was passed. And I was just like, oh no. Like, accident, not strategic. It's just
Just is what it is. Yeah.
Just is what it is. Fair enough. I can see how that looks. Fair enough.
I know people have people have so many thoughts about this stuff.
Yeah.
I guess we're sort of coming towards the end, I think. This is kind of a tricky question to ask in general, but PlaySafe ID basically needs to be like watertight so that people can trust it, right? Like it's a trust system ultimately at the end of the day. Do you think that is your biggest risk? Like, how do you feel about that, right? In general sense, like getting people to trust you, and if there's any, you really are, if there's any problems at all, it's going to blow up, basically.
Yes.
How do you feel about this?
Shit. It's a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do. The thing is, I've been gaming since I was like 3 or 4. I'm turning 32 now. pretty much everyone on the team's the same. All of my mates that I was playing with for some of them decades now. When we were first thinking up this idea, I fully appreciate how skeptical, we as gamers are, and how nitpicky we'll be, and how trust is hard earned and it is burnt in an instant. And that's why we've built every system that we have. We've put every process and procedure in place that we have. The scariest moment for me is the moment that we go live in our first big integration. Okay.
Mm.
Because I think that every single person who cheats in games is going to have a vested interest to try to attack us, break our system, make it the worst experience possible. Like, it's gonna that I think is going to be the trickiest bit, is because we're a self-cleaning system. Like, we have to, the people have to be caught for us to be able to keep them out. So the griefing on the first day of the hardcore cheating community coming in to kind of be like, well, I'm here, ha. But as they're caught, they're then kept out. But yeah, we're gonna have to be perfect every step of the way. But that's why we delete the ID. It's why we have Onfido store the biometric. It's why we have all of these systems and processes in place. We're trying to not have any information at all, if possible, and any information that we do have is hashed, randomized, anonymized, behind tenancies, behind specific security procedure, behind MFA and additional security stuff, to make it that stuff can't happen or is unbelievably unrealistic that it will happen. It's a tough fight. I'm going to have to earn the trust of everyone. It's going to take us a long time. It's going to take us integrating in lots of games and proving ourselves game by game, user by user. But if we do a good job, and if we change the rules of engagement where cheaters are caught and then they're actually kept out, if people decide they don't want to risk it and they don't want to cheat, if we're catching them and we're keeping them out, if we're able to prove that this pool of matchmaking in any game that you play is the most fair, best way to play, where you'll have the best experience possible, hopefully we get there. But it is a trust game. It absolutely is a trust game. And it's going to be hard.
For sure. Last couple of points here. A couple of people have been, saying around online, we don't need this stuff. They just need to make AntiCheat better. AI AntiCheat's coming. This is going to fix all the problems. What are your thoughts about AI AntiCheat, just kind of in general? We mentioned AnyBrain before, but I'm sure there's others as well.
First of all, I think it's brilliant. But do you know who also has now got an AI?
The cheaters.
Yeah. So that's fun. My view is the cycle is broken. For the last 15, 20 years, we've had fairly sophisticated and increasingly sophisticated anti-cheat that's had breakthroughs and breakthroughs and breakthroughs. But it fundamentally doesn't matter if someone can create a new account and come straight back in. Cheat developers have unlimited lives to be able to iterate cheats, to be able to sell them, and players, it doesn't matter if they're caught cheating because they can just come straight back in. This has been especially prevalent with the rise of streaming, with the rise of content creation, with the rise of free-to-play games and games as a service, and microtransactions, removing barrier to entry. Gaming has never been more popular to play or to watch or to consume as content in short form or long form. There's never been more reasons for people to cheat, and it's never been the least amount of punishment for someone who's caught cheating, because of how all of this is framed and structured. So we're at this really, really shitty point in the gaming industry, which is why I decided to, as a lunatic, throw myself into the fray, dox myself, say, hello, everyone, fuck cheaters, let's go, let's do this. And yeah, try to change the rules. But I don't think saying AI will fix it is the right solution. The other thing as well, right? The costs involved with AI to process, if you have 10 people in a match and the match is 30 minutes, to process that 300 minutes of gameplay, and then you've got 50,000 concurrent users, and on average they'll play 2 or 3 matches, and the volume of footage and content of video processing and storage, and the AI cost to chunk through it all to be able to catch cheaters, against the upside that's delivered to the studio, and then the cost of the license and the cost of the overhead to, commercially, I don't think it'll stack up. I think the costs of being able to do a lot of this stuff will be prohibitive, especially for small and mid-sized games. Maybe the bigger games can eat a big chunk of it, but I don't I don't think just going, oh, AI will fix it. Like when you actually look at the unit economics and the costs and the scale, I don't actually think it can. I think it can technologically. I think it can make a big impact, but commercially, I don't know whether it'll be unit economic price tolerant for it to solve the problem against the uplift of the volume of cheaters that you're keeping out. So yeah, I don't think AI is necessarily the silver bullet. It's definitely a great weapon, and I think it's very, very welcome. But I think fundamentally, you have to make it matter if you're caught cheating. I think if you just solve that one bit, you'll get so many people who won't cheat because it's not worth the risk, and then people who are caught face that meaningful punishment, and they're not able to just come back in and ruin other people's fun. I think that's the real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting saying how you're kind of becoming a bit of a lightning rod for the cheating community. You know, people are going to come in and target PlaySafe and all this kind of stuff. Have you got any final words to to the cheaters? Is there anything that you'd like to say to the cheat community or people who are considering cheating or thinking of cheating or do cheat?
The vast majority of people want to sit down and play because they want to have fun, and the stuff that you guys are doing impact that. And yes, other people are having fun because of that, and fair enough. I know there's been a really big call for HVH hacker v hacker lobbies in like CS and stuff like that. Like there is a community of people who like cheating and have fun in cheating. I'd say I'm not directly trying to stop you guys from having fun and do what you're doing. I'm just trying to make this one environment where it's not accepted and it's not tolerant, and people who want to have the most fair, legitimate gameplay experience possible can have that. I think that's my honest take with it. Is it's like I don't inherently despise cheaters or think they're bad people or any of this kind of bollocks. It's just me and my mates and all of the people that I know who play legit have had enough of the bleeding edge between the volume of cheaters spoiling the regular experience. So I would like to say just stop cheating, but please don't cheat and play safe protected stuff, and please leave us alone.
They've forced you to get up at 9:30 in the morning to talk to me about this solution. So, it's like if they could just stop cheating, you wouldn't have to bother.
I know. I've often said this to people. Is it's like I love my job and I love what we're doing, and it's bloody hard, and there's so many things to solve, and it's difficult. But I would love it if this wasn't a problem that I needed to solve. Like if cheating hadn't got so bad and me and my friends didn't have such a bad experience, I wouldn't have got to a point that I went, fuck it, I'm going to quit my job, raise some venture, build a team, build a system, and actually try to solve this problem. I'd love to just be plodding along and be sat here playing Apex or something right now, but here we are. So
Excellent. Well, I think I've exhausted all the questions. I did try to. I've scoured online. I've scoured the Reddit threads. I've talked to my community. I've built a sort of the most robust set that I can think of. I'm sure people will think of extra stuff, in the comments and things like that on the video, because it's obviously going to be posted on my YouTube channel at some point. So if you do have any comments or questions or anything like that, I mean, you can either post them down below, or I mean, I believe you guys have got a full Discord set up now, right? So people can go in there and ask questions, and you've got your guys in there and yourself answering questions and things like that too, right?
yeah, so if you go to PlaySafeID.com, there's a link to our Discord on there, so you can jump in, you can ask any questions. I answer questions directly, so does my community manager and a couple of other folks. So no bars held. Like, give us shit, ask us questions, ask us the tough questions. We know they exist. We know that there's reservations and that there's concerns, as much as there are loads of people who love us and support us. And we're not afraid to shy away from having these conversations and letting you know how we've thought about stuff and what our feelings are. I think it's an important part of the transparency and building the trust between us and the gaming community.
Great. Well, thanks for the chat. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. And I wish you the best of luck in the rollouts. Hoping to get some announcements soon.
I can't wait to make them. Yes.